All right, well, a couple minutes after the hour, I think this is a good time for us to begin. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality for this Volkswagen program webinar. I am Stephen Rice, an environmental specialist for the Division of Air Quality. I'm also the Level 2 Program Manager, and I'm joined by additional DAQ staff who manage other aspects of the Volkswagen settlement. I want to go over a few housekeeping rules before we get started. First, all attendees will be muted during today's webinar. Questions can be submitted in the Q&A box and will be addressed during the question and answer time if not covered in the presentation. The raise hand feature will be disabled until the question and answer time and will only be for those who have called into today's webinar by phone. For those that are calling in, pressing *3 will raise your hand, and pressing *3 again will lower your hand. All other attendees must use the Q&A box to submit questions, and make sure that when you're submitting questions that you address the questions to all panelists and not to individual panelists. Otherwise, we might miss your question. Also want to note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available at a later date. And finally, we have 2 hours to cover the program in detail, but if we complete everything and answer all questions in less time, we do have the option to adjourn early. If we are not able to answer all of your questions by the end of the 2 hours, we will let you know how to get your questions to us. And that covers the housekeeping rules. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Sheila Blanchard, the Clean Heavy Duty Diesel Program Manager.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Can you hear me? I assume that's a yes.
We hear you loud and clear, Sheila.
Excellent. Great. All right. Welcome this afternoon. We're going to do an overview of the Volkswagen Clean Heavy Duty Diesel Program. I'm Sheila Blanchard. I'm an environmental program consultant with the Division of Air Quality. Currently am the interim program manager for this program, and can hopefully answer all of your questions that aren't addressed by this webinar. This webinar will be recorded and posted on the website, so if you miss anything, you can usually find it there. Okay, so what to expect today? First, I'm going to give an overview of the heavy-duty diesel replacement program. We're going to talk about when and how to submit your application. We're going to talk a little bit about scoring criteria and what makes what we're looking for when we are looking at these applications. Going to tell you where you can find information after this workshop, and then we're going to go into some questions and answers. Just a reminder, this is not a public forum for comments on the implementation of the Volkswagen settlement. Okay, the 2022 heavy diesel program, we released the RFP on May 16th, 2022. So it's open right now. The applications are open in our DAQ grant management system, which I'll call the GMS from this point forward. It's been open since the RFP was released. The applications for this program are due August 15th, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You will not be able to submit an application after the closing date in our grant management system, and we will not be accepting any applications outside of the grant management system. And this is something that I will probably say more than once in this presentation. Once again, August 15th is the deadline. First things first, this is a reimbursement program. This means that when you submit your application, we will write up a contract and we'll go into contract, and you will have to buy the vehicles and destroy the vehicles and then make a claim for reimbursement. So you have to have all of these funds up front, and then plan on getting reimbursed a few months after the spending of these funds. So there's some time delay here. Just a brief overview of the timeline. Once again, the RFP was released May 16th. This time, the applications are open now. In order to access our grant management system, the GMS, you have to ask for access. in the past few weeks, we've had a lot of applications close, and I've had to tell more people than I care to that because they have not asked for GMS access, that they will not be able to submit an application on time. I do not want to tell people that. We have a GMS access deadline. If you do not submit the access to the GMS by August 1st, it is likely you will not get in time to complete an application. So I really, if you take anything away from this presentation today, it's that you really need to get a lot of these, the NCID, the GMS access form submitted well before you intend on applying. So our application evaluations will happen August to September. We hope to have our project selections around October, and then we'll do our awards in October. The funding levels are about twice as much as they were for phase one. There's 12.9 million available for phase two. This is similar to all of the other diesel programs. Like rest of the phase two programs, we are prioritizing electrification projects. Obviously, heavy duty projects are a little bit behind the times when it comes to electrification, but those projects are out there, so we'll be looking for those. Electric projects with an electric vehicle replacement can also include 75,000 for the associated infrastructure for that vehicle. So if you buy an EV, then you can ask for up to 75,000 for the infrastructure to charge that EV. Once again, for government organizations, government entities, you're eligible for up to 100% of a reimbursement for the vehicle and up to 75,000 for associated infrastructure with all fuel types. Similar to our other programs, if you're non-government, you're eligible for 25% of a reimbursement for diesel and 25% of a reimbursement for alternative fuels and 75% of an all-electric project. If you're not currently on our mailing list, please send an email to get information about our Volkswagen settlement program. You can send the word subscribe to the subject line to DAQ_NC_VW grants at ncdnr.gov. You will see this slide multiple times throughout the presentation. And as Stephen said, this presentation will be available on our website, so you can get to it there. Who is eligible to submit projects? Like our other programs, local, state, and tribal government organizations are eligible to apply. Public or private nonprofits are eligible to apply. And public-private partnerships, where the lead applicant represents a public sector or public-private nonprofit entity. So these are the folks that have similarly been able to apply for our replacement programs, vehicle replacement programs. And read the RFP if you need more clarification on these organizations. Now, which equipment is eligible? Engine model year 2009 vehicles and older are eligible for replacement under this program. And this includes class 4 through 8 local freight trucks. Local is within 200 miles. Freight is moving stuff back and forth. Switcher locomotives, ferries, port cargo handling equipment, ocean-going vessel shore power, and airport ground support equipment, all of which must be electric. So these are the kinds of projects that are eligible under the Volkswagen funding. This is just a picture of some of the possible Class 8 trucks. These include fire trucks, dump trucks, cement mixtures, refrigerated vans, fuel carriers. These are all considered freight because they're carrying things, and the Class 8 are the largest of the vehicles. In class 4 through 7, we see a lot of these running around town. You have little city delivery trucks, walk-in trucks, bucket trucks, all kinds of other kinds of vehicles, and really the class is dependent upon the weight. And so really most of these freight vehicles, as long as they're on road and they're registered to drive on the road in North Carolina, they will be eligible for replacement. And just to say this again, only diesel vehicles are eligible for replacement, but you can replace with any other fuel. Just a picture of some of the kinds of projects that are eligible. We have a freight switcher, we have some tugs, that's shore power on the very right here, ground support equipment, large forklifts and some port equipment here. So this is the range of eligible mitigation projects under this particular RFP. Once again, eligible equipment includes 2009 engine model year and older. Vehicles must operate at least 7,000 miles per year in North Carolina. These are the on-road vehicles. Off-road vehicles other kinds of equipment have slightly different requirements that you would refer to the RFP for. You may replace these vehicles with a new diesel or alternative fueled or all electric equipment, and these must be new vehicles that you replace them with. And then finally, all the replaced equipment must be scrapped. And scrapped is a very stringent definition that we have from EPA. Scrapped means that the engine and largely the chassis must be rendered inoperable, can be available for recycle, and at a minimum, this is a 3-inch hole in the engine block for all engines. And we ask for pictures for this. We ask for a before picture and an after picture. Finally, scrapped may probably also includes the disabling of the chassis, and this is where you cut the vehicle frame rails completely in half. Now, this limits your ability to transport that vehicle, so I recommend that those frame rails get cut completely in half once you get it to the recycling, to the place where you plan on recycling it. We ask for photographic evidence of all this for you to receive reimbursement. Once again, the funding levels for government-owned equipment, the replacement, up to 100% of the cost for new diesel or alternative fueled equipment, and up to 100% of the cost of new all-electric equipment, including the cost of installation, and up to $75,000 for charging infrastructure associated with that new all-electric equipment. And once again, this is a 1-for-1, one charger for one electric vehicle. For non-government owned eligible equipment, up to 25% of the cost of a new diesel or alternative fueled equipment, and up to 75% of the cost of new all-electric equipment, including the cost of installation of charging infrastructure associated with the new all-electric equipment. Typically, the way that we determine the cost shares is based on who owns the equipment. So, in order to apply, you must access the Division of Air Quality Grant Management System, the GMS. We've had some issues in the past 4 or 5 RFPs with folks not being able to access the GMS. And for the most part is because they have not requested access to the GMS. So this is a big part of being able to apply. So I'm going to go through a little bit about how to do that. You have to follow all of the directions in order to request and be granted access to the grant management system. And then you must be approved, which could take up to 2 weeks before you can even log into the system and start an application. The deadline to request access to the DAQ GMS to guarantee access is August 1st, 2022. We will not extend this deadline. You may, of course, request access after this point, but we cannot guarantee that you will be able to submit an application. When you get an email that says, "Welcome to the DAQ Enterprise Business System portal," that means you are able to log into the GMS and you're able to upload your materials and fill out a VW grant application. Okay, so the first step that you need to do is to set up an NCID. The NCIDs, a lot of people already have NCIDs. If you already have one, then you can use that one. But if you do not have one, you will have to get one. And this is the NCID username is usually your first and last initial with your first and middle initial with your last name, and then your password. This is what you will be using to get into the GMS system. So the NCID. Get an NCID. That can take some time to process. So if you haven't done that, I would go ahead and do that as well. And we're going to walk through a little bit about how to go through that. Acceptable, I would recommend the first name or initial, middle initial, and last name, and then a number if your name is already in use. So Wiley E. Coyote, Wiley Coyote, Wiley Coyote 2. These are some examples of some NCIDs that are acceptable. Do not use your company or organization name. Do not use a random number. These should be your NCID should be specific to you, and it should be for individual access that is your access to our grant management system. After you get your NCID, you will submit an Enterprise Business Services External Request application. You can find this link not only on in this presentation when you download it and go into presentation mode. You can find this all over our website underneath all of our programs. This will lead you to this web form. This web form you will have to fill out, and then you will push submit, and that will be your requesting access to our system. Once again, this may take up to 2 weeks to be processed. The sooner you can get this in, the better. As far as agency, this is going to be Division of Air Quality. You can see where it's asking you to put in your NCID, your first name, your organization name. This should be your personal or your work email that you want any communication between the GMS to go to, et cetera, et cetera. And then your role will be as a person that could submit applications and process claims. Each organization, so along with this grant management system access, you will have to submit a W-9 that affiliates you with your organization. And that W-9 and that organization is allowed up to 3 authorized users in our grant management system. Once you've submitted this form and some time for the people behind the scenes to submit your request, you will receive an email that welcomes you to the GMS system, and then you can log in. Once again, the deadline to request access is August 1st. This is a screenshot of the portal that you will use to get into the GMS. This user will be your username. This password will be your password that you set up in NCID. There are many, many more instructions for the GMS on our website here at this link. We also had to devise a user manual. We have a lot of tutorials on how to use the GMS. So once you get in, there's a lot of support for uploading and getting your application in the system. Once you get in, if you don't know what you're doing, you can go immediately to the DAQ training library, and that has a series of modules that should assist you in all of the things below, which includes creating a new application, creating a new claim, viewing your application, viewing your agreements should you get awarded, viewing your claims, editing your application, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a resource if you need a little bit of training within the system, and it uses web shots and modules to help walk you through it. Now let's get to what you need to submit a heavy-duty application. This is a replacement program, so you're going to need a lot of information on the vehicle that you would like to replace. The first thing you're going to need is the heavy-duty application in our GMS. So once you get in and you go through some of the modules, you will submit your information. You will need a diesel bus and vehicle Excel spreadsheet. We have this linked in the GMS. We also have it on our website. We need all of those fields filled in. We will need pictures of the equipment being replaced. And the reason we need this for clean heavy duty is because there's a lot of exchange and terminology for the kinds of vehicles that are out there on the road that could be eligible. And we need to confirm what is what when we're looking at these applications. You will need a quote for the vehicle that you would like to purchase. If you're hoping to go all electric or requesting funding for all electric, we need quotes for your charging infrastructure, which includes not only the equipment, the cost of the charger, but the cost of the installation, which is a large part of implementing charging infrastructure. If you're applying as a nonprofit, I will need a copy of your charitable solicitation license. And then there are optional supporting documentation. If you're applying on behalf of a town or a city, you may need to show that the funds are available through some kind of commerce process. So those sorts of things would be applicable for that supporting documentation. This is what all of these uploaded attachments in your application is what determines a complete application. Incomplete applications before the deadline will not be considered for funding. This is another reason why you may want to submit your application well before the due date, so that if there is something missing, I can get back to you and make sure that you have a complete application and I don't have to reject your application. Once again, the due date, August 15th, 2022. There will be no way to submit an application past that point. If you have additional questions, your subject line, send an email to DAQ NCVW Grants, that email address with heavy duty diesel program question, and that makes sure that your question gets to the appropriate team member that can answer it. Once again, this is another checklist of the application requirements. Besides the uploaded attachments, you also need to have the kinds of information on the vehicle to be replaced that we need to run our emissions quantifier. So outside of the project information and your contact information, we also need your replaced vehicle engine information. This includes the model, year, make, mileage, and pictures of all equipment. And then we need what you are hoping to buy. We also need infrastructure information and cost estimates, and then any other additional documentation. You can find checklists for all of these documents on the various program web pages. So under the Phase 2 Clean Heavy Duty Application or Program, you will find checklists for everything that you need to submit an application. This is a screenshot of one column for the vehicle equipment spreadsheet. You could do multiple units and on these spreadsheets. And we really need we need as much of this information as you can provide. Your application will be rejected if you do not have an engine model year. Actually, it will be rejected if we're missing most of this information. So please try and fill this out as much as you can, to the best of your knowledge. Additionally, a lot of folks have been not submitting applications with the new replacement vehicle. You may not know the make or model, but you will probably know who you're getting it from, the model year. You will know what your fuel type is. And the most important thing here is to divide up these costs. We need to know how much it costs to replace the vehicle, how much you're requesting of that cost to replace the vehicle, how much you're requesting for EV infrastructure, and then the cost share per unit is how much money your organization is putting towards the project. And so please if you fill this out to the best, as completely as you can. If you have questions, call us, and we'd be glad to tell you what needs to go in these spaces. So getting to the nitty gritty, once you're in the GMS system, how do you actually submit an application? The first thing you're going to do is go to create new application under the search taskbar here. So you go to create application, just push search. It's going to give you a listing of all the program applications that are open right now. So right now, when I printed this up, the school bus program was open. All of these were open, but this is the one, this NCDAQ DEQ 0013 Phase 2 Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program is where you are going to want to submit your application. If you submit this application under any of these programs, it will be rejected. It will not be evaluated. So you go to this application form, you press the link, and it's going to give you, this is what the application looks like. And this is an example of one of the ones that we had in Phase 1. You're going to fill out all of these details. If you do not fill out these details, you will not be able to move to the next screen. You will not be able to submit your application. So you should fill these out. We need an organization name, a project title, your tax ID number that your W-9 is affiliated with, the number of vehicles, what program, what class. This is for financial stuff for us. Your eligible applicant type that will determine your cost shares in the budget section, and then your project type and your address. This should be the project location where these vehicles will be stored, where you plan on using them, et cetera, et cetera. And then you press next, or you could press check and make sure that all of those details have been filled out. You press next and it'll take you to the next screen, which is your contact information. I would very much recommend that you have more than one contact on your clean heavy duty application. And this is for multiple reasons. We do a lot of communicating through our GMS and through our application process. And if I only have one contact and that person is out of town or has retired, it's very difficult for us to get to other people that can answer our questions. So if you could, it would be great if you had more than one. Your project manager should be the person that gets all the primary information about the grant, should you receive it, as well as all the information about the application when that goes in. So that should be the person who we expect to answer all of our emails. Authorized representative should be the person who signs on the dotted line. And then the financial contact is the person that holds the purse strings. So fill these out to the best of your knowledge, and different folks there allow us more avenues to get in contact with you should the need arise. This is an overview of the budget, which is the next screen. Typically, we're looking for, in your project total, is going to be the total cost of replacement of that vehicle, how much you request from VW for that vehicle, and how much you're putting in as matching funds. Okay, we have infrastructure costs, which is the total for the project, how much you're asking from VW, and then any other funding. If you decide to do other funding in this fourth column, you have to tell us where you're getting that funding. And you may be requested to submit documentation for the fact that you have that money going to this grant. Okay. In general, the other budget item will not be used in vehicle replacement programs. So do not fill out this row for the clean heavy duty application. And these will total up for you if you are not meeting your required cost share. Say you're a nonprofit or organization and you have a required cost share, this will let you know. You go to next, or you can check. And then you go to the next screen, which is the project details. Project details is where you tell us a detailed description of the proposed project. In this first section, you want to tell us how many vehicles you want to replace, what kind of technologies you're using. If you want to replace with a propane, do you have a propane infrastructure for that vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. We want to know really everything there is to know about your vehicle and what you're going to replace it with. And probably why. Is it, what kind of duty cycle does it do? Who does it serve? The next few questions are asking you about our sustainability, letting you know how it fits into our mitigation plan, which has to do with NOx mitigation, the likelihood of this in being the beginning of a fleet transition for your organization goes into the third section. Please fill these out. The more information we have, the better. And this is where we're going to turn to in the case of a tie. We have 6 questions. So 4 is we're looking for co-benefits. This includes sensitive populations, if you're serving children in some way, shape, or form. 5, have you already done a grant like this? Have you done a replacement grant? Have you done a Deere grant? Have you done a Volkswagen grant? This is where we want to know that you can indeed do the project and have the necessary administration ability to do the project. Okay, so this is where you're going to lay that out. And then number 6 is where you put any other relevant information that you think would be important for us in engaging and evaluating your application. You're going to get to the certification. This is where your authorized representative is going to sign and date. This means that everything that you have put into this application is true. You're going to save and close, or you can check. This will check all of your application to make sure everything is complete. You'll get a notification if something isn't and where you need to work a little bit more on it. Or you'll get and everything's good, go ahead and submit. At any point during the application process, you can save and close and come back into it again. And I will tell you how to do that in the next few screens. We've had some people that have had issues with this, so I'm probably going to say it more than once. So you can save and close and come back to it. But then if everything's good, go ahead and push submit, and that means you have submitted your application. The next screen you're going to have is going to give you an application ID. I would write this down because if you have multiple applications, this will be the one that is identified with this particular application. At this point, you are able to upload all of the attachments that were listed in the previous slides. So you go here, you say choose file, and then it'll tell you the file name here, and then you go attach, and it'll attach. It's not going to give you a hey, this file was attached message. You just kind of have to go through and attach. But if you would prefer to attach a different way, you can attach in view app in edit application or view application. And I'm going to show you that now. Once you have an existing application, you're going to have all kinds of stuff in your workflow here. Or you're going to have things that you've done. What you want to do is go to edit application, not create new, not view, edit application. That will take you to an application that has been saved but not yet submitted. You will input your application ID. Additionally, you could say star 853 in this field, and the asterisk in Boolean assumes the first part is can be anything, but the last part is what you're looking for. So it'll give you what a star 853 will get you to this application. You could also additionally just push the search button, and it'll list all the applications that you have started, and you can go from there. Okay, so once again, if you wanted to edit, you have something, that you wanted to add, you would push the submit button. And once you submit an application, you will not be able to edit it. You can upload documentation, and you can, if I return it to you, you can edit, but you can't edit anything in the form once you submit this. All right, so once again, once you have submitted and you view an application that you can't no longer edit, you can do the same thing, the same search. It will give you all the applications that you have submitted. You can go into that application, and you can finally, once you have your submitted application, you could do attachments from this section, which is directly under the project details. It will ask you to choose files. Once again, you'll have the file name here and upload, and it'll create a list of all the attachments that you have attached in support of your application. Once again, until you have those attachments all completely submitted, you will not have a complete application. Okay, some tips and things to know. It's important, all diesel equipment to replace, the engine model year must be 2009 or earlier. There is no wiggle room on that. 2010 cannot be replaced. This is a legal requirement of the consent decree. Increases in fleet size are not allowed. This is a replacement program. Therefore, you must destroy a vehicle to get a vehicle. In the same vein, the replacement vehicle must be like for like. This means the original equipment and the equipment that you plan on replacing it with should be the same size, the gross the weight, it should have the same duty cycle, it should have some of the same attachments, things like that. Your budget information should be as accurate as possible. You should do your best to figure out how much it will cost to get these vehicles. We reserve the right to award partial funding. If we award partial funding, we will let you know, and you have the right to reject the award. Once again, please fill out your essays or your short answer. These will be used to assist in evaluating projects that score similarly to determine awardees. I'll say it one more time. Applications must be submitted to the GMS by August 15th. Until you are awarded, you cannot sign any agreements with vendors or start work until your contract is fully executed. Now, a fully executed contract takes a lot of time. So once you get awarded, you still cannot start until we get the contract process in place. So it's important to know that an application award is not a fully executed contract. Please subscribe to our mailing list if you haven't yet. Once again, you'll probably see this slide again. So we're going to talk a little bit about the scoring of the application. So when you submit all of your information, we are going to take the information about that vehicle that is to be replaced and the replacement vehicle, and we're going to put it into the EPA diesel emissions quantifier to quantify the emissions that are mitigated by your project, by your vehicle. So vehicles will be scored against each other. They will be ranked, and then they will be sent to selection committee for selection. Things that we are considering, and our factors are not limited to, and our selection committee can come up with different factors. Lifetime cost effectiveness. This is essentially how many VW dollars to do your replacement per lifetime NOx tons reduced, the lifetime NOx emissions of the reductions of the project, the location of the project. So this is where the vehicle intends to do its duty cycle, environmental justice areas, whether it's an electrification project. And then we have our historically under-resourced county bonus, which goes into the selection criteria. Specifically, this is the point distribution of the selection criteria. As you can tell, the lifetime cost effectiveness and NOx emissions reductions are a large proportion of the points that are awarded to vehicles. That is because the main intention of the VW funds and the consent decree is to mitigate NOx that was created by offending Volkswagens in the state of North Carolina. That's why these are very high points, and these points are contingent upon the vehicle that is being replaced, as well as the vehicle you intend on replace it with, and the cost of the project in general or in total. We do have some allocations that are going towards rural areas and suburban and urban areas. This has not changed since phase one. These are the classifications of the rural counties and then the urban and suburban counties. These vehicles, in general, the projects will be ranked whether they're rural or whether they're suburban and urban, and then the split will be allocated accordingly. So lifetime cost effectiveness is based upon all the information you give us. We use the diesel emission quantifier, and then matching funds. So a quick rule of thumb is the lower the cost of your project, the higher and the older the vehicle, the more miles the vehicle gets, the more fuel the vehicle uses, the higher your cost effectiveness will be. What will happen here is that we will rank all the projects that we get in this criteria. It's the vehicles, they'll be ranked, and then the points will be distributed from highest to least cost effective. And then the points will be allocated based on the distribution. Same is true for lifetime NOx emissions. What affects this are the age of the vehicle, the duty cycle of the vehicle, the amount of fuel the vehicle uses, and then what the replacement, the emissions of the replacement vehicle. These are similar. We will rank the highest NOx emission reductions to the lowest NOx emissions reductions, and then assign points from high to low. The location of the project, we have part of the consent decree was allocating money at a rate where the Volkswagens were kind of hanging out. So that goes into our criteria as well as the NOx scores of the existing NOx of the counties from our emissions data. So we determined some ways to develop these NOx scores, which is the location of project scores. These are set based on the county of your duty cycle of the vehicle. And you're welcome, you can put up multiple vehicles in multiple counties, and then each vehicle will take its own county scores for wherever that vehicle plans on doing most of its work. So if you want more information about how we got those points, we have an appendix in the RFP that explains how we got this data and how we got the scores. Environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. We do have an environmental justice component of our scoring criteria. This is also related to the county where the vehicle is doing its primary duty cycle. These scores were assigned in tandem with our environmental justice team. We have specific ways that we develop these scores that you can also find in the appendix of our RFP if you have more specific questions about that. We also have developed a historically under-resourced county outreach program, and this was primarily to get interest and applications from counties that have typically been underrepresented in phase 1 or underrepresented in our Mobile Sources grant programs. There are specific ways that we determine these counties, and we did all kinds of outreach this spring to solicit applications and to help folks do applications. The way that we determined these counties was if they were considered underserved, if they had an underserved population greater than 15%, and they were designated as Tier 1 by the NC Department of Commerce. So projects where vehicles are being replaced that are in these counties will receive a bonus of 10 points. And that is also, the counties are also listed in the RFP, as well as the methodology for how we determined this outreach program. And this is a map of the counties that are included in this program and are eligible for those 10 bonus points. I have developed an eligibility tool to determine if your project is funding. This is something that you can find on our website. I think it's on one of the first pages, and you can also get to it from this link. This is a series of questions that will allow you to determine whether you as an entity are eligible, whether your vehicle with its model year and its how many miles it gets on it, and what kind of vehicle it is, under what RFP it may apply for funding, or you may apply for funding. So if you still have questions about whether you are more eligible for the VW heavy duty, or if you're more eligible for DERA, for instance, this would be a good starting point for that. So the due date, once again, August 15th, 2022 by 11:59 p.m. All supporting application and documentation must be uploaded to the grant management system. And we will not, under any circumstances, accept paper, scanned, emailed, or faxed applications. And we will not accept applications after the due date. Assume your computer will break down the day of the application that is due. Do not wait to submit. Where can you get more information? You can get more information from the Clean Heavy Duty Program website. Everything I've said, including this presentation, as well as the recording of this webinar, will be available there, as well as how Stephen Rice's GMS access application that occurred earlier this month. You may also email questions with Clean Heavy Duty in the program questions in your subject line to DAQ_NC_VW grants at ncdnr.gov. We also have additional resources. We have some partners that are available to help you. They've been out and about with us, and oftentimes you'll get emails of information from them, which includes the Clean Cities, some regional councils, air quality agencies, the Clean Tech Center. Some of these folks are there to help, and they are additional resources should you need it. And if you need help in contacting one of those, you're welcome to ask us. Here are the contacts. As I said, I'm Sheila Blanchard. I'm the interim heavy duty program manager. My email is sheilablanchard@ncdnr.gov, sheila.blanchard, and you can call me. We also have Brian Phillips, who's my supervisor, who's available, and Robin Barrows, our program supervisor, who oversees some of the Volkswagen outreach programs. So these are our contact information here. And I guess now we can open, I realize I breezed through that. So we can now open up to questions, and I will leave it on our handy dandy subscription to our VW email list, just in case you haven't seen it yet. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions.
All right, Sheila, I am the designated question asker today. We had 4 by the time you were wrapping up, and we received a couple more, but starting from the top, our first question is from Mark Palmquist, and he asks, for which purchases dates is equipment eligible for reimbursement? Is it only from now until August 15th?
I'm not sure I understand your question. So you must have owned the vehicle for the last 2 years to submit it for replacement under this program. It should have been, there's lots of different requirements in our RFP that I just did not have the time to go over. You should have owned it. It should be 70%, I believe, in operation in North Carolina at over 7,000 annual miles a year. And then as far as replacement, you may replace with a new vehicle of this year or model year next. So 2022, it will likely be 2023 at the current rate of delivery. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but if not, please feel free to add more.
And the flip side of this, and maybe it's easier for me to interpret as I'm looking at it, Sheila, but he also might be asking, essentially, when is the first date available for when equipment is eligible for reimbursement? So maybe we can talk about how purchases of equipment can't be made until the fully executed contract is established.
Yeah, I can. So once you apply, the application date closes on August 15th. We will do evaluations of all vehicles, and then we will make selections, and that's going to be it's going to be a month or so after the application closes. We will make announcements. We will send out award letters. We will have to get acceptance of that award, and then we will have to get all of the stuff needed to generate a contract. The contract itself could take up to 1 to 2 months to generate and become fully executed. At no time can you begin work or procurement of a vehicle or infrastructure before the generation of a fully executed contract.
All right, thank you, Sheila. Our second question is actually multiple questions from the same person, from Miss Kayla DiChristina, and she asks, can you discuss the 7,000 annual miles traveled requirement for vehicles to be eligible? And are we being asked to prove this? And if so, how?
Well, The 7,000 miles is a requirement for replacement because because the more mileage vehicles that we can replace, the better the NOx outcomes for the citizens of North Carolina. I would suspect that under the honor system, that someone would not submit a vehicle that gets fewer than those miles. So we will not be asking to prove, but you may, for our DERA programs, and potentially for this, we may ask for a certification before award that you are indeed getting that kind of mileage out of a vehicle. And of course, the applications, once you sign that application, everything in that application has to be true. So I guess I will leave it at that.
Okay, and another question that Kayla had was, if our vehicles are tracked by hours in use, what is a recommended way to convert this into miles traveled?
I'm not sure I understand if the vehicle is tracked by miles and use.
Is it miles in use? If our vehicles are tracked by, I'm sorry, hours in use. If I said miles, I was mixing up my words. If our vehicles are tracked by hours in use, what is a recommended way to convert this into miles traveled?
Okay, so most on-road vehicles are not tracked by miles. They are tracked by an odometer. Off-road vehicles are typically tracked by hours, and you have an hour type odometer. And so those would probably be different kinds of vehicles. Off-road vehicles have different requirements, and for this program would only include freight switchers. I'm trying to find it in the RFP. Forklifts, cargo equipment. So, if there are hours, those hours would be on the off-road equipment spreadsheet. So hours are generalizable to fuel use, similarly to miles. So there would be no conversion to miles because those would be very different vehicles. And most of the off-road equipment it that isn't listed in our RFP is probably more likely to be eligible under DERA, which is the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act grants. But if you have hours on an on-road vehicle, that's odd. I guess you might want to email me for more information on that.
Okay. Let's see. Our next question is asked by Karina Hendren. Is there a possibility that vehicles with EMY 2010 will be eligible in future grant cycles?
Not for VW. VW, this is the end of the road. I cannot. There are some vehicles that are eligible under DERA, the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act funds. Those specific model years determine what you can replace it with. So that's a different grant program that will be coming out a little bit later this year. So I would look towards that. And if you have more specific questions about the vehicle and whether it's eligible, I can help you out with that as well. If you just want to get in contact with me.
All right. Our next question was from Sandy Dale, and she asks, are heavy-duty trucks older than 1992 eligible? For example, a 1989 model.
The criteria is engine model year 2009 and older. Diesel, over 7,000 annual miles within the state of North Carolina 70% of the time. So I would say it should be eligible.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Maggie Perry. Will you share the presentation after the webinar has ended? And Maggie, I'll go I'll give Sheila a break, maybe to take a sip of water or just to get ready for other questions. But yes, the presentation and the slides will be made available on the DAQ Volkswagen website. We're going to get them to our PIO for review and upload ASAP. But both the recording of today's presentation and the slides should be available soon. Our next question is from Gilbert English, and he asks, is there any funding allowed for propane infrastructure?
No, there is no funding for propane infrastructure. There is funding for propane replacements. But associated propane or other CNG type sort of infrastructure isn't eligible under any of our programs.
Okay. Let's see. Olivia Anderson asks, does the North Carolina preferred vendor or installer list apply to this program? And as you're thinking about that, she had also asked if we can go back to the timeline slide.
Wow, it's pretty far back. Guess I could have gone to the front. Oh. Oh, okay.
Okay, so the timeline is now showing, and the question again was, does the North Carolina preferred vendor or installer list apply to this program?
No, we do not make vendor recommendations as part of the DEQ and as administrators of this grant of these funds. If you are a government entity, however, if you are required to buy on state contract, you will have to buy on the state contract. So those kinds of rules still apply, but we do not make recommendations for vendors or require any particular vendors. That's really up to you.
Right. We have a question from Brent Brinkley, who asks, did you say all airport GSC replacements must be electric?
Yes, under the clean heavy duty RFP, all airport ground support equipment must be replaced with all electric equipment.
Okay, and the last question that I see right now, hopefully I've not missed anything, is from Joe Morris, who asks, the vehicle we hope to replace is at the end of its functionality. It is currently out of service, with extensive repairs needed to place back into operation. Is this vehicle eligible for replacement?
No, your vehicles should be in service. We are not allowed to replace out of service vehicles that have not been doing their duty cycle, the mileage that's reported for the last 2 years.
Okay, and we had one more question pop up as that last question was read from Deanna Rosreo. I apologize if I mispronounced that last name. Are street sweepers eligible?
I do not believe they are. I think they're eligible under DERA, but because they're not considered freight, I don't believe they qualify under the VW these particular funds. But I can certainly check that. You're not the first person that has asked, but I don't believe they're eligible under this. But I can check and make sure if you want to send me an email.
Okay, and as of right now, that is all of our questions in the Q&A box. I don't know, maybe if you want to go back to the, maybe toward the end of the presentation, Sheila, for the contact slide, just to have that up again. And if we don't see a question in a minute or two, I think we can call an end to today's presentation. Right. So again, our attendees should be seeing Sheila's contact information there, as well as Brian, again, the overall Volkswagen mitigation plan manager. With no more questions being entered into the Q&A box, Sheila, if you would like to close, you are welcome to do so.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. I hope that we've answered some of your questions about this RFP. If you continue to have the questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. I'll say it one more time: the sooner you apply, the sooner you get in, the better. So please consider that as you go in into the next few weeks, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.